5. At the beginning of all of our episodes, I go like this.
I think I do too. We're like, get everyone excited.
Yeah. On the podcast, just so you know, the face that we're making is like this, like, eyebrows up, mouth open, big smile kind of face. It's hilarious.
Apparently we both make that face a lot.
Ah!
We were working with our media marketing business extraordinaire person yesterday.
She's so good.
She was like helping us edit videos and stuff, and she was like, yeah, you guys are really expressive. We have really expressive faces, apparently.
We both did theater in high school, so it's like probably some of our theater training, because when you are on stage, you have to make really big facial expressions.
Happy.
Sad. Very exaggerated, you know?
Well, I may have even been too exaggerated, even in theater. I don't know. I did get that feedback from my theater teacher,
really?
Actually. She was like, not that I was too exaggerated, but that I had a very expressive face.
I used to get that feedback too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She said it was a good thing. So.
We are soul twins, you and me.
I know.
I love it.
We didn't know each other when we were teenagers, but we totally would have been friends.
Probably. Yeah. But it's a good thing that we weren't.
Yeah, we would have gotten into trouble.
Definitely.
We both had some rambunctious teen years.
Yep. Some wild oats to sow, y'all. We were sowing some oats.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
So this is really fun that we're on episode 5, because we're in the head triad, and we're going to start with type 5.
Type 5. So just a couple things about the head triad. So when we say the head triad, we're talking about 5, 6, and 7. And we're calling it the head triad because these are folks who operate primarily out of their mind intelligence center.
And obviously, we all use our brains to be smart and intelligent, and in our culture, at least here in America, that is one of the main forms of intelligence, sometimes even the only form that's really validated.
Or rewarded in any capacity.
Rewarded, right,
yeah.
Right. We have an intelligence center here in our brains, in our hearts, and in our bodies and our guts. So I like to think of, in the head triad, almost if you, like, the head triad folks tend to be really smart.
Super smart.
Not that the other types aren't smart, because they're very intelligent too. But one of our teachers, Tammy, actually, she used to describe it as, if you think of your intellect as a muscle, and you're flexing that muscle and you're working it constantly, that muscle is going to get really strong.
Yeah.
And I really love that description of how the head types can be so intellectually driven and oftentimes really smart, especially type 5. It doesn't mean the other types aren't smart or that they don't have the same capabilities, but it's almost like that's part of the fixation.
For type 5, it's almost like that intellect muscle is kind of like flexing so much that all of the other muscles atrophy in a way. It's like they've got this like big superpowered brain, but not a lot of access to the other intelligence centers usually.
And they're actually the big myth about type 5 is that they are unemotional. Fives can struggle to dive into their emotions and to validate their own emotions, but they tend to be very deep, feeling people. Deep. They're right on the bottom of the Enneagram, right next to 4. And I think that's why they have so much depth to them.
The thing about it is that instead of kind of sitting in the emotional pool like a type 4, they're going to be really taking those emotions and sending them up to the head to analyze them, right? So it's like, I'm going to think about this emotion intellectually instead of feeling it.
A lot of times, if you ask a 5 what they're feeling, they will tell you what they think. And even like, it's like, well, I think I feel, and I kind of love pointing that out to 5s.
Yeah.
I'm like, you didn't tell me how you were feeling. Feeling is a body sensation.
So I heard a lot of thoughts. How about some feelings?
So 5s are the energetic of 5. The energetics always have something to do with the fixation and the way that the patterns and the way that we think and feel, how that impacts how we hold our bodies. And so for fives, the head triad, the core emotion is fear. And type 5 is internalizing that feeling of fear. For type 5, they have a relationship with acquiring knowledge and seeking knowledge, or data. Data could be another way to say that, in a way to manage or deal with that feeling of fear. And a lot of times that fear says something like, I don't have enough. I don't have enough energy to do life. Others are going to violate my boundaries. And so there's this like fear associated with a type of lack of resources.
Which, if you can imagine, right, sending all of that information, all your feelings, all your instincts up to your head, then of course there's going to be a limit, a big limit and a big boundary around what you have to give to other people, because you are limited. You've got like a giant head and atrophied the rest of you. Well, we live, 90% of our experience from kind of the chin down. Right? So there's a lot of stuff going on in the heart and the gut and the body. Yeah. But for fives, they're super cut off from that. So of course they're going to feel really limited about that. So
they're almost like living in their brains, and they're trying to intellectualize things, and they're trying to figure things out and observe things. They're also called the observer. And they're almost doing it from like the back of their heads. And I'm doing this on purpose. It's like, if you're thinking about everything and trying to figure it out and acquiring more knowledge, but you're also trying to make sure that you're okay and that your resources aren't plundered, there's this bit of a like caving in, and this like your head goes up and then your body kind of like sinks in.
It's like a pulling away from, like making yourself as absent as possible from the present moment, from what's going on. So 5 is called the observer, also called the investigator. And that's because they spend a lot of time kind of observing life, watching it happen, or investigating things in their head, but not a lot of time in the physical being of humanness, right? So a lot of 5s have kind of created fantasy worlds in their head as a way to escape what's going on. And that's a function of their essence, which is called peace. So for 5s, they are really wanting to have peace and have kind of quiet. They often really value solitude. And so their mind becomes this place where they can retreat whenever they need to. And so they spend a lot of time up there because it's the only place where other people don't infringe on them.
And that spending time up in the head, for many 5s, that could be this pursuit of really like depth intellectual pursuits of a system or a field of study. A lot of 5s like really obscure knowledge about one subject, and so they become experts. We have a lot of 5 experts in their fields. Or also that living in the intellect could also be through fantasy, just like you said. Like sometimes 5s have a whole like fantasy world that they've created in their head. Characters.
Living places.
It's a way of like really living life through fantasy. And
like take World of Warcraft and just put it in your head and like imagine like only playing World of Warcraft in your head. Yeah. So there also tends to be a lot of creativity in type 5. Oh my God, 5s have this expansive like innovation ability. It's so cool.
Fun fact about the head points and about type 5 in particular. 4s would love to be the most nonconformist on the Enneagram, but they're not. It's type 5.
Yeah.
All of the head points in particular are pretty nonconformist, particularly 5 and 7.
Yeah, but if you take like the nonconformity and being special element of 4 and then take away the image piece of like the I don't give a shit about what people think about me, right? That's 5. And I love 5s for that.
Because 4s care, but
exactly.
5s kind of don't.
Exactly.
They want to be nice.
Yeah.
They want to be thought of positively,
of
but
course.
They don't pour energy into making sure that you think that about them.
Or making sure that you are comfortable, really. That's like not a concern of theirs. I personally love 5s energy, and I find it really difficult because it's so boundaried. But I have so much to learn from 5 energy because those boundaries are just like, they are tight and they will let you know. And if they are tired, they are going to bed. And I just love that about 5.
It's such a good thing.
It's so good
for people that struggle to take care of, care of the needs. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love being friends with 5s. I love 5 energy. They can dive deep with my 4 my 4 intellect and my 4 like wanting to go create rich conversations. Yeah. 5s often are really good at that.
Yeah. I also love it how like I'll try to like do something for them or meet their needs and they'll be like, no, I don't need that. Nope, I don't want your pretzels. I'm good. I'm not hungry. That's so good for me to hear, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's an interesting topic to bring up with 5 because a lot of times 5s are trying to minimize their own needs. It's almost like if they can get away with being really small and not eating a whole lot, not drinking a whole lot, like 5s like sometimes can forget to eat or forget to shower or like do these things because it's almost like this making themselves smaller and not needing anything from anyone else or not needing anything else from the world. It's part of the fixation.
Right. There's this idea of like, if I don't need anything from you, then you won't need anything from me and you won't take any of my very limited resources away from me. Yeah. So that's type 5.
Type 5.
Thanks for spending time with us, type 5. We're going to move on to type 6.
So we are in the avoidant point of fear with type 6. And type 6 is super special because they are the type on the Enneagram that has the most prominent spectrum of what we call a phobic spectrum. So sometimes this is explained through subtype, but not always. We can have 6s that are very fearful. They have a lot of anxiety.
Very in touch with their fear.
Yeah. Almost like and you can even see it in their bodies. There's almost like this shaking.
Like a chihuahua.
That happens. Yeah. Yeah, and there's just this, all of this energy that goes into, oh, did we think of that? Oh, did we think of this? Oh, okay. It's like this really
Did you pack a Band-Aid?
Yeah, it's like this really fast thinking intellect energy around safety. And sometimes I think of 6s of what if thinkers. It's like, what if this happens? Well, what if this happens? And that is an example of a 6 who's on the phobic end of the spectrum that I'm talking about. The really special thing about 6s is that they also can be on the opposite end of this spectrum, which is called the counterphobic 6. And these are 6s who may not even identify with a feeling of fear. It may be very, very difficult for them to admit that they ever feel scared. They're often adrenaline junkies, people who are jumping off of cliffs, a lot of rescue workers doing really high...
Evel Knievel.
Yeah, high risk things, jumping out of planes. And they're jumping in front of the feeling of fear, almost to like prove to themselves that they're not scared, or to like try to like battle this phobic part of them.
It's so both of these ends of the spectrum are ways to avoid fear. So if I am like visibly nervous, but I'm always trying to kind of cut fear off, right? Like I'm not going to feel the fear. I'm just going to worry about how many fire extinguishers there are. And if I have a Band-Aid and be prepared for anything that could possibly happen, then I don't have to feel my fear. Versus on the other end where it's like, oh, I might be afraid to jump off that cliff, so I'm going to go do it and just put myself right in the face of the danger so that I don't have to deal with feeling the feeling that's associated with that. Right. So both are a way to avoid fear because 6 is the avoidant point of on the head triad.
Right.
So,
and it's a very, I like to think of it as like a really intellectual fear. It's like the fear of not knowing or the fear of uncertainty. There's a lot of doubt with 6. 6 is called the loyalist. It's also called the skeptic or the devil's advocate. And part of that is this relationship with fear, which is also a relationship with trust
which is the essence of 6.
Yeah.
So the essence of 6 is called divine trust or spacious wisdom, also sometimes called divine faith. So if we think about the idea of fear and uncertainty, what's really on the other side of that is this like beautiful ability to sit with the idea that everything's going to be okay and I got this and I am divinely held and I am protected and everything's okay. And for 6s, they very rarely, like, it's all of this behavior is a mimicking of that. It's like, if I prepare well enough, then I don't have to deal with feeling afraid that something might happen. If I, take care of all the uncertainties in my life, then I don't have to deal with the idea that I don't trust my intellect to get me through this situation.
Yeah. It really is about self-trust. I mean, obviously bad things happen to people all the time. Like we often cannot control what bad things happen to us, but for 6, they have such a big brain that's so in touch with all of the possible things that could happen. They're very expansive in that way, and they're very intelligent in that way. They can think of a million different scenarios.
Oh my gosh.
It's really impressive.
Yeah.
But it's also such a core source of anxiety for them, in that like it's fear. And it's not about trusting that everything is okay. Nothing bad is going to happen to you, because something bad will happen to you. It's about trusting yourself to be able to handle it. Or even trusting the universe or the outward, something larger than yourself, that it's going to be okay. And fun fact about 6s is that while they often do a lot of preparation for crisis out of fear of not being able to handle the crisis, and 6s might even vocalize that. They're like, oh gosh, what if this happens? I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to be able to handle it. You will, because 6s are so good in a crisis.
Yeah, they're the best.
They are. I used to do a lot of like high risk, type of work, and I always had 6s on my team, and I loved that because they were always so good in a crisis. They were stable. They knew what to do. And the fun thing is, you 6s out there, it has nothing to do with how much you plan.
Nope.
It is this natural ability. I think that a lot of times in crisis is when the essence comes out of 6.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. It's like when the world is more, like with the outside of self is more representative of the inside of self, the inside of self can be calm and be still. And they can tap into trusting that everything's going to be okay enough to really access that wisdom.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It definitely is a type of wisdom. Of I am secure, and that's something that happens inside of you. It's not something you create outside of yourself. I just love 6s.
I do too. You guys, I have to admit that I basically collect them. So if you're a 6 and you want to be friends with me, just like sign up, because I collect 6s in my life. I have so many 6s in my life, and that has to do with me like having some kind of chaotic tendencies and getting myself in a lot of emergency situations. Like I tend to catch things on fire or like hurt myself. Or like
she trips over something and hurt herself.
Like my car breaks down. Like just like I tend to kind of have things like that happen to me, and that's a factor of my subtype and my fixation, which I won't go into. But I think that subconsciously I collect 6s because they're really good at helping me through those things. They're really good at being like, oh, your tire blew? Okay, I'll be right there. Like, we got this. Don't worry. You know how to change a tire. You're good. Like, there's this really like calming effect. It's really lovely. Yeah.
Well, 6s can be really, often are really warm, very loyal people. If you're friends with a 6 and you get in with them, you're often a friend for life, unless, something happens that really disrupts their trust of you. And something important to think about with them is that the battling of fear for them can look like getting really bulky and getting really strong. Some 6s, especially on the counterphobic end, look more tough,
like
and strong, they look like 8s. And I want to mention that because a lot of 6s on that and think that they're 8s, is because an 8 is already strong. They don't need to try, and they don't need to bulk up a lot of times around any fear of that. They have a fear of being weak, but it's not the same.
I would also like maybe change the word strong to the word tough.
Yeah.
There's like a toughness. It's like an intimidating, like it looks real stoic on the outside, and it can sometimes be kind of confrontational because 6s are the loophole finders. So they're always looking for reasons not to trust you, and breaking down your logic or finding the loophole is usually the thing that does that. So one of my good friends who is a 6, of course, the first time I talked to her about the Enneagram, and I was like, you might want to read about type 6. She read it. She was like, this is bullshit. No way. She's like, I just don't, I mean, she's like, I guess, but like, I don't really. And then she started asking me a lot of questions about it, right? She was like looking for ways to poke holes in this logic, in this situation, so that she didn't have to face the fact that she didn't trust it.
Yeah, 6s often are the big doubters of the Enneagram. And, doubt away.
Yeah.
Doubt away. It's part of the, it's
part of the process.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so that's type 6 in a nutshell.
We're going to let's talk about our last type.
Yeah, type 7.
Type 7.
Yay.
Ah. If you've ever seen Gilmore Girls, which Hannah and I both love, I think Lorelai Gilmore is a really great example of a 7. Don't you think so? She's like so bouncy.
I think her character is definitely a 7.
Right.
But since we're talking about it, I'd love to mention how difficult it is to type fictional characters, especially live ones that are being played by actors, because the actor might not be the same Enneatype as the character that they are playing.
As is the case with Lorelai Gilmore.
And so be careful when you're like, because you get really mixed messages.
That's right. You have to kind of separate the actor from the character and kind of see the actor's intention, what they're trying to get across, and then type from that. Right?
Unless the actor is in fact the same Enneatype as the character they're playing, which happens a lot.
Yes.
Because directors are looking for that certain type.
Will Ferrell is a great example of that. Will Ferrell is probably a 7, and he plays a lot of 7s.
Yeah. Elf.
Buddy the Elf. Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
Anyway, type 7 is called the enthusiast.
Look at us having fun as we're talking about 7.
We always have fun when we talk about 7.
That makes so much sense.
I know we always have fun, but we really have fun when we talk about 7. So 7's called the enthusiast, and they are the externalizing point on the head triad. So they're taking the emotion of fear and pushing it out, just like 2 does with shame and 8 does with anger. So 7 is taking that like kind of dreadful feeling of fear and pushing it outside of themselves. And the way that they do that is through tweaking moments. So through not being present. 7's like kind of main deep fear is around being trapped or missing out on something or being limited in some way. So they're kind of always looking for opportunity and always looking for, how can I make this moment better? What could be more fun than this? What's that other party like?
What's that other country like? It's a lot of travel with 7s. A lot of actually moving away from situations and people and things.
It's actually part of how they deal with conflict. Sometimes is to like physically just like peace out and be like, I gotta go, bye.
Yeah. And I'll say that is a more fixated trait of 7, and that learning how to sit with the negative emotions and be present with the feelings of fear and boredom and the things that come up when you stand still is part of the work of 7.
7s are also like kind of the visionaries of the Enneagram. Yeah. They have big visions and big dreams. 7s and 1s. But 7s, it's like, they may be starting 5 companies at the same time, and, also, being on the board of a nonprofit and...
Yeah, and they have these big powerful brains that just expand, where they can think of a million different ideas And they're also really enthusiastic about all those ideas because for a 7, planning things is one of the most fun things in the whole world. And they really enjoy sharing that excitement and planning with other people. And I love that energy because sometimes I can feel blocked by ideas or brainstorming or any of that. That's always been something that's been kind of hard for me. But for 7, it's so expansive. I really love being in planning.
So fun.
Planning modes with 7s.
Yeah, so fun.
But the thing with 7 is that sometimes they enjoy the planning so much, but they don't enjoy the follow through. And so they can get in situations where they do a ton of planning, but they don't actually commit to the process or commit to the thing that they're doing. And that can show up in work, or that can show up in relationships. 7s, a lot of 7s struggle to stay in any kind of long-term relationships. And sometimes they don't want to. They're like, nope, that's boring. I really don't have any interest in that. And then sometimes they really do want to be in a relationship, but they keep finding themselves not being able to make it work. And that can be a real
source of pain.
Yeah.
The essence of 7 is called bliss. And 7s are, it's this beautiful, abundant, like, happiness type quality, and they're mimicking that by avoiding negative emotion and by kind of always moving towards the thing that's fun or funny, and not actually being with the idea that bliss is available to us no matter what we're going through. Even in complete agony, we always have access to like a kind of blissful state. It's how we are brought into the world, 7s especially.
Right. And you don't need anything to tweak that moment. Like it's already there. It's already there in abundance.
And actually, the irony of it is the more present you are in the moment, the more really available you are to what's actually happening, the more you're able to experience bliss instead of running away.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
So the energetic of 7, which is motivated by all of the stuff that we just described, the patterns of it, they tend to be very energetic.
Wiry.
They're happy. They have a tendency to put a positive spin on a lot of things and to have this belief of if you just stay optimistic and you don't focus on anything negative, that's actually the key to happiness, or that's the key to what everyone needs to do. And so they have this like bouncy, wiry, exciting energy about them. And that often is almost like I can't sit still. Or they sit still for, as long as they need to, and then they're outie.
Coffee.
Yeah.
Those are Gilmore Girl fans.
Yeah.
Love that.
So all of the folks in the head triad, in the thinking triad, they all have this special relationship with knowledge, and they all tend to be very like intellectual thinkers. For 7, it's in this expansive idea formation and being able to see so many possibilities. For 6, it's kind of similar, but it's more motivated in fear almost of like thinking of all the possibilities so you can plan for everything.
For 6, it's like I'm thinking about all the things that could go wrong, and for 7, it's like I'm seeing all the opportunities.
Yes, all the things that could go right, almost.
All the things that will go right.
Yes.
So fun.
And for 5, it's more, the relationship with knowledge is in acquiring knowledge. Right. It's like the more knowledge I have, the safer I'll be and the more secure I will be. And a 5 may or may not share their knowledge with you.
Oh, they may or may not.
Yeah, according to subtype, they may or may not. Some 5s love to teach.
Yep.
And others really like to hoard their knowledge, and that's what helps them feel safe.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's the head triad.
That's the head triad, guys. Hope you're feeling all intellectual-like after hearing that. I'm feeling all intellectual-like. Like, I'm going to go read a book or something.
I'm not. I'm going to go have lunch. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, y'all.